Hello everyone, and welcome to the Mapocolops Game Awards for 2022. We are closing out the year. It is New Year's Eve. We're on the last day of the year, and we can finish it up celebrating something that we all know and love together, video games. And we love video games over here in all of their forms. We absolutely adore every aspect of video games, and I'm here to celebrate the games on my channel today. So as you can see, we've got a beautiful high budget, great stage, very good presentation in how I'm on the screen here. As you can see, I'm definitely on stage. This is live. There's a studio audience out there. Let me hear it. There it is. We're happy to have you here. Welcome to the Mapocolops Game Awards, where today we're going to run through my favorite experiences on the channel. So this is not going to be the games strictly out in 2022. This is a celebration of my channel in 2022 and the games that I have played, and I will be giving out awards of those games on the channel. We've got a lot of categories, so while there are some absolutely incredible games that have come out in 2022, they've also got to go up against some heavy hitters from previous years that I played for the first time this year. So I feel like it'll make it a little more exciting. It's not just going to be the same two games that you're thinking of that will be going up against each other in every category. Sure, they are in many categories, but there are other games and other sort of categories that I wished to shine spotlights on. Now, we're going to have categories like Best Narrative, but also Best World Building and Lore. We're going to have Best Music. We're going to have Best Art Direction. We're going to have Best Gameplay. We're going to have Best RPG, Best Shooter, Best Horror. We're going to have something called the Hidden Gem as well, which is speaks for itself, the Hidden Gem on my channel. We're also going to have, obviously, my overall favorite game of the year on the channel for this year, and then my game of the year 2022, which is for the games that I played that released this year. We're also going to have fan favorite, which is the most viewed video or the most viewed game series on my channel this year. And then we're also going to have my most anticipated game for 2023 as well, which will be looking to the future. Now, I've limited every single category to 5 nominations, so I have not gone too crazy. Every single category is limited to 5, and I feel like that is pretty fair. It felt nice to round out every category at 5, except for fan favorite, which is a little different because it's more of like a viewership ranking, so it has some more. There are some games this year that are excluded from the categories because they are currently being played. That game being Dragon Age Origins. Unfortunately, as I don't have a complete opinion and viewpoint on that game, as much as I really am loving it and enjoying it in multiple aspects, I don't have that complete view on the game to be able to put it in any of these categories. So it has been excluded for that reason. As of doing this video at the end of the year, I have finished God of War Ragnarok, and I've been doing the post game. So that is in my awards. That is in my nominations because I've finished it. I have a complete opinion and perspective on it that I would not be able to give a good opinion on unless I had finished the story. And that was a really interesting point about the Game Awards earlier. That was, Jeff Keighley's Game Awards, not to be confused with the Mapocolops Game Awards. The Game Awards had God of War Ragnarok and Elden Ring going up against each other in a lot of categories, and I didn't have concrete opinions yet because I hadn't finished Ragnarok. So I was like, it could go either way for me, so I'll be surprised at whatever wins. There are things that I was like, when Ragnarok wins, I'm like, that makes sense. And there are things when Elden Ring won, I'm like, that makes perfect sense too. Very happy for Elden Ring winning the game of the year because both games do deserve it in their own ways. It's a really hard thing. At the end of the day, however, the moral of the story is it's all down to personal opinion. the opinion of myself, the opinion of your fellow man, woman, or everyone else on this planet, every human being, the opinion of your fellow human being is not, an attack on your own. And it doesn't cancel your own opinion. You can love a game more than anything else in this world, and just because someone else doesn't like it as much as you doesn't mean that your opinion is wrong, okay? So going into my awards, obviously, these are my own personal opinions on what I think was the best for 2022. So without further ado, let's start the Mapocolops Game Awards. Let's go. Okay, so I don't know how I'm going to go through this because there's no rehearsal on a Mapocolops Game Awards. You just press record and you jump right into it. So we're going to start off with the best narrative. Okay, so I guess I'll just run through it in the way that I've written it down on my notepad here. We're going to save the overall favorite and the game of the year 2022 for last, but we're going to start with best narrative. Now, 5 games in each category. The nominees for best narrative are Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, Metro Last Light, Disco Elysium, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, and God of War Ragnarok. That is the 5 for best narrative. A narrative to me is the events of the story that pull you along. That whether that be the cutscenes, the dialogue, the characters interacting with each other, the way that the game has presented itself to you, grabbed you by the hand and said, "Come with me, we're going on an adventure." And the way that it takes you through the highs and lows and the emotional beats and everything. And different stories will resonate with different people for different reasons. And the best narrative to me, we're going to start that one off with God of War Ragnarok. It does go to God of War Ragnarok. But like I said, these games have some tough competition in other categories, right? It has some tough competition in other categories because it's going up against other games that came out before 2022. Disco Elysium was my runner-up, right? Disco Elysium is in that number 2 spot, with Metro Last Light taking the 3rd seat. So it's a God of War Ragnarok win, but with some heavy hitters close behind it. So when I announce the winners of these categories, you will also see my 2nd choice and my 3rd choice, okay? The ones that were close. And the funny thing is, you have to keep in mind that, like, this is obviously my top 5 in each of these categories, right? So, like, all of these are ranked from 1 to 5 in a way, So these are my 5 best narrative experiences on the channel, and then there is one winner, you know what I mean? And it's hard to choose a favorite. From someone who has such a varied taste and is into so many different things, it is really hard to pick a favorite of things. What's your favorite, like, movie? What's your favorite artist? It's difficult, right? It's even hard to choose my favorite game of all time, to the point that I have to just go with my heart and always choose that one particular game that I'm like, this just has to be my favorite game of all time at this point, But that is the best narrative. Well done, God of War Ragnarok. There are no Christopher Judge speeches today, so you don't have to worry about that. There's also no ads, no sponsors, no game reveals. It's just the Game Awards. We're just focusing on the awards today as we celebrate what we love about video games to close out the year. Okay, let's move into the next category, which is closely tied, right? It is closely tied to narrative, but it's different. It's the best world building and lore. It is what creates the world that you play the story in. It is everything in the background. It's everything that's going on. It's the environmental storytelling. It's the optional stuff that you do. It's everything that has built this world to make it as believable and fleshed out as possible, right? So it's like a supplementary story category, okay? And for world building and lore, we have Outer Wilds, we have Metro 2033, we have Disco Elysium, we have Elden Ring, and we have Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Now, my criteria for best world building and lore was that the game had to be the first in its series without supplementary material outside of the game, and it couldn't be a sequel that relied on previous games' world building. God of War Ragnarok is exempt from this category because it builds off of what was established in the 2018 game, for example. Metro 2033 is the first game in the Metro series. While it may be based on a book, I think it is my exception to the rule because it is the first game in the series that adapts the book. You get what I mean. Now, the winner. That's what we all want to know. The winner of the best world building and lore. And the winner of that is Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium is a game that is built so well, so flawlessly, so airtight, that I genuinely can't even believe that it's not real. Disco Elysium is a game that you feel that you could step into that world and never question your reality. It's very strange in that way, that it has supernatural elements to it in a certain aspect, but the way that game is built and put together, and the characters, oh my god, it really floors me just how realistically built Disco Elysium is. There's just something about it that is just like just incredible. It's airtight. Like I said, it's airtight. And what I loved about Disco Elysium is it felt like, and this is something I love about world building, is that it felt like a small experience in a massive world. Like, the world building was not hanging on that story in that game. The world building is not like fully attached and only reliant on that one experience, right? That one experience is just taking place in a much, much larger established world. And you could have so many different characters, so many different events take place in that established world. And I would be so happy with that. You know, brand new characters, brand new experiences in that established world. You could do that. The Disco Elysium anthology, you know, you don't have to be tied through with Harry and Kim. You could be with anyone in that world, and that was the beautiful thing for me, is that it wasn't a world created for that story. That story was created for that world, and I think it's a very important difference, right? Disco Elysium wins the world building lore category. My runner-up, number 2 and 3, was Elden Ring for number 2, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic does take the third spot. Now, in terms of my world building and lore sort of like criteria, there is some, it's not airtight, right? There is some looseness to it. For example, Metro 2033 is adapted from a book. Disco Elysium also has a still yet to be translated novel about the world of Disco Elysium that hasn't been released, and probably never will be, and still makes me sad that I can't read it because it is still in Estonian. And Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic does deal with some established world building in Star Wars, right? It does. However, it introduces so many new concepts, and it's all the way back. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of years back, and introduces brand new concepts, new origins, how things work, all that kind of stuff. That's why it feels far removed enough from the Skywalker saga, the main saga of Star Wars, to be included, right? So it's a criteria that I adhered to in just sort of the way that it's the first game in its series, you know? But it does take the third spot. Disco Elysium wins, Elden Ring has a secondary spot there, and Knights of the Old Republic in third place. I like that category a lot. I really like it. Was a really lot to think about, but that is my top 5 world building and lore experiences, right? There we go. There we go. Let's move into the next category, which is best music, okay? Best music for 2022, okay? Out of the games that I played, The nominees for Best Music, and I'm a big music fan. Let me tell you that I will put on a game soundtrack and I will stare into the void and I will allow myself to just be enveloped by the music. Our nominees is Pentiment, Outer Wilds, Elden Ring, Disco Elysium, and God of War Ragnarok. Now, this is an interesting case. I genuinely believe that these soundtracks are just exceptional. There are certain moments in each and every one of these games that just you hear the music and you are transported to another dimension, and you hear it and you're like, holy crap, someone composed this. Someone had an idea and created this thing that, like, they took my heart out of my chest and they cradled it and said, here's the most beautiful thing you've ever heard. And then they put it back in and you're a better person because of it. Music resonates with people in many, many different ways, and music speaks to people in many different ways. But it is one of the main ways that people are able to communicate without language barriers, you know? And I love music in general. Video game music is just absolutely exceptional, however. And with the best music, the winner goes to Elden Ring. Elden Ring has the best musical soundtrack out of these five for me. There are just some classic tracks in there that just make you go, holy crap, look at what I'm doing. Look at what I'm playing. I was here. I came to this point and I took on Melania, Blade of Mikola, and I won. You know? And that main menu theme just really just shows you what you're in for right off the bat. You know what I mean? And it's not to say, again, when we get to these categories, not to say that one was worse than the other. It technically kind of is just didn't resonate with me as much, but it's still an absolute masterpiece in its own right. So this is my top five. Outer Wilds takes the second spot, and then Disco Elysium takes spot number 3 for best music. So Outer Wilds just has some particular musical tracks in there that just really tug at your heartstrings. There's some beautiful compositions in there, and very clever ways that some of the music is utilized as well, without going into any spoilers. Disco Elysium as well, just an incredible time when you're just navigating the world and of Revachol and Martinez, and you're just walking the streets and the music's blasting in your ears and you're like, god damn, this is making me feel some things that I don't even know how to interpret yet, but I'd be feeling them and we'll process them at a later date. Disco Elysium's soundtrack, just incredible. And obviously God of War Ragnarok and even Pentiment, a recent release, has just some beautiful musical moments that I really love. And it's always music has its moments. It's not just because it's constantly blasting music at you. Sometimes there is a game that doesn't do music as much, but when it uses it, it's super effective, you know? And that is sort of the deal with like Outer Wilds and Pentiment, stuff like that. It's the music just hits in a very particular way when it does come out. That's best music. There we go. And now we're going to move into best art direction. Now, if you know me by my gameplays and my extensive commentary on games, right? You know that art direction is one of the things that I love and appreciate about video games the most. I will even just not care about what the game looks like graphically if the art direction is just presented so well. And that's the thing. Art direction makes or breaks games in how they age. There are games that you can play that are 20 years old and you go, this has not aged. This has not aged poorly at all. You can go back to it and it's like, this just looks so good. And art direction is timeless. There are games that choose very particular, art direction that ages the game in future years. You go back to it and you're like, damn, they tried to go for maybe like the most realistic look at the time. They tried to go for the best graphics at the time, and then it just doesn't age as well. But there are games that choose maybe stylized graphics. There's like cell shading. There's, just ways that the game is presented in a way that just doesn't age. And it's always just a very interesting thing to look at that and be like, how will this game stack up in future years? And the really important part about that for me right now is looking at my 5 nominees is how much will that change when I look back on this in a few years' time as well? Because there are certainly games in this list that will age better than others, even if one is going to win but not age as well. You know what I mean? It's just, this is the best art direction for me as it currently stands, and that's always a changing opinion because of the way that games age over time. You might go back to it in 5 years' time and go, man, this does not look as good as this game 5 years ago. You know, this one still holds up. It's a very interesting thing with how we view things because everyone perceives art differently as well and takes different meanings away from it. But best art direction, the nominees is Stray, cat game. I believe it has a nice art direction. It's pretty good. Will it age well? Who knows? Disco Elysium, Pentiment. Pentiment is kind of like the definition of art direction, if you know what the game is about. Half-Life Alyx, and Elden Ring. That is our best art direction. And the winner of that one goes to Elden Ring. Elden Ring has exceptional art direction and how that world is built in the visual language of the different environments, the characters, the armor sets, the weapons, the creatures, the bosses, just all of it. Elden Ring's art direction is just exceptional. It really is. That opening cutscene with the artwork as well, there's just so much, and there's just an incredible detail to be found in everything in that game, and it wins best art direction. The second runner-up is Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium is second place, and this is what I was mentioning. This is what I was talking about when I say which game will age better, Elden Ring or Disco Elysium. One of them has, you know, graphics for its time, and the other one is more of a stylized artistic approach that may age better in future years. You'll look back on it, you could play this 40 years from now, and because it doesn't have a focus on incredible graphics, and it's more of a stylized art direction, it may age better. But in the current age of 2022, Elden Ring wins, because it really is just exceptionally gorgeous. And my third place for art direction has to go to Pentiment. And the specific reason that it goes to Pentiment as well in third place is that game is literally like an art history game. The way that it is presented in multiple ways is just so exceptional. Like, the game is art in itself. It's the way that the characters speak in different script depending on their class or their background. It's the way that certain words are highlighted differently. It's the fact that the whole game is being written out, you know, and drawn and painted in like a manuscript. The way that the game has like sort of like a glossary that you can refer to, and you look back to it, it has all these like drawings in a book, and it's just like the way that game is presented with its art direction is honestly exceptional, and it deserves recognition and it deserves its praise. It's beautiful. You are literally playing like through like a artistically drawn storybook, and it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. So best art direction, it goes to Elden Ring, Disco Elysium, and Pentiment in the third place. And now we're going to move into sort of moving out of. We've got one final category for sort of separate aspects about a game, and then we'll start getting into the genre. We'll start getting into the genre awards. So the next one goes to best gameplay. Now, gameplay, again, something that will click with different people and not click with other people. So I have wanted to shine a spotlight on some particular games and the way that how they make me feel with how you engage with it, as well as, the overall just sort of experience with how it feels to play this game, And the best gameplay nominees is Half-Life Alyx, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, Metro Last Light, Elden Ring, and Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. And I'm glad that there is a category in here that I am able to put Chaos Theory on. I can shine a light on Chaos Theory, at least as a nomination, which is really, really good. Now, gameplay, how it feels to play the game, how intuitive it feels, how rewarding it is, how exciting it is to just pick it up and you're like, I want to play this because it just feels so good, right? And multiple games have many different systems that they build to hook you in, to engage you, to really just constantly give you that sort of dopamine and serotonin when you're just playing a game. You're like, this feels so good. This is amazing. And for the category of best gameplay, the winner is Metro Last Light. And I specifically chose Last Light over 2033 only because I feel that Last Light sort of takes things to the next level in a lot of ways. And there has not been a shooter that I have played in my life that has made me feel as immersed as the Metro series. The way that I feel that I am in the boots of Artyom playing Metro is insane to me. There are so many different ways that comes out in the game. I've been playing the games so far on a more of a hardcore difficulty, stripping away elements of the HUD. You have to like read your journal, you're wiping stuff off of your face, you're checking how much oxygen and you got in your light meter on a watch, and the way that you got to be careful with you can be careful with your exploration and look for things because it's not gonna give you the button prompt. You feel so in that world, and it's incredible. The way that it is to play and engage with is really exceptional. I did have some hiccups and some unfortunate moments in my gameplay where some things weren't working right, but I'm trying not to hold it against that game, because that's not sort of how it's not the intended experience, and it's not a common experience, So the way that it made me feel to be in the boots of Artyom playing that game takes top spot for me. Just such an exceptionally immersive experience that it was even hard for me to provide commentary at times because I was too busy just being in the game. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry I'm not talking much. I'm just in this right now. And it's great. So Metro Last Light takes the top spot, with the runner-ups being Splinter Cell Chaos Theory for number 2, because I absolutely love the systems that are in that game. It is probably the Splinter Cell series, but especially Chaos Theory, gives you such an exceptional way to go through stealth gameplay that it just felt amazing. The way that it worked, the different tools that you have at your disposal, how many different ways you can tackle situations was great, and it felt really good. And it was just the tension of stealth and trying to avoid being seen or caught was so much fun, and I loved the systems put in that. Chaos Theory is my runner-up, with my third place being Half-Life Alyx. That was the first proper VR experience that I have played. I've had experiences with VR with other things, but this was what a virtual reality game should be. It the way that it has raised the bar and just is gonna keep it up there for such a long time. I cannot even understate that. The way that it feels to play in a virtual reality space, which is one of the most challenging things to do in a video game. A lot of people struggle, and I struggled, but to make it as comfortable as possible, to make it as fun and enjoyable as possible while you're in quite literally one of the most immersive experiences ever, because you are seeing it, you're moving with it, is just crazy. Again, it's really tough. Best gameplay, I feel like, has some really big games here that are all fun for their own different reasons, but I feel like the most sort of immersive and rewarding gameplay gets the spot for me, even to the point where like it was really hard for me to even choose like runner-ups here between Chaos Theory and Alex, because I'm probably flip-flopping on that one in my head the most between them, which is interesting, because the way that they've all made me feel in different ways is incredible. But Half-Life Alyx's gameplay is something that everyone needs to experience, and they do try their best to make it sort of as comfortable for everyone as possible with different movement types, but it was just crazy how you could interact with things so naturally. The physics of that game, you can take a pen and write things, you know, it's ridiculous the way that you can hold items in not just one way but multiple ways, and the way that like items are thrown, the way that objects are interacted with felt realistic. They all had like a realistic weight to it, and it was just crazy. And it's like the more that I talk about Half-Life Alyx, the more that I'm like, oh, maybe that's the winner. But it's hard, and I genuinely think that Metro Last Light has that top spot for like immersion, and the fact that it can beat out virtual reality with those things says a lot. It does say a lot. That was the best gameplay category. Very, very, very challenging gameplay category for me to determine. But now we're going to start moving into the genres, of which there are only 3 genres in here: best RPG, best shooter, and best horror, because for the most part on this channel, what gets played are kind of those games, you know. So I don't, you know, I could probably try and expand it to best action adventure and best this and best that, but I don't want to get too watered down with that. So we're going to go with just those top 3 genres, right? The best RPG, role-playing game, which is great, because a lot of people have different definitions on RPGs, and there are computer RPGs, there are Japanese RPGs, there's, you know, just the standard Western RPGs. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of different types of RPGs, and these are my 5 nominees. So, role-playing game nominees are Demon's Souls, Pentiment, Disco Elysium, Elden Ring, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. And this one was really hard. This one was really hard to determine, because from a role-playing perspective, it's there are different elements that make one for me. Now, the Demon's Souls is here instead of Sekiro, for example, because the way that I differentiate RPGs is Sekiro gives you a named character for the game. Everyone plays the same character, and I feel like that is almost a clear way to differentiate what is, you know, the true essence of a role-playing game or not. And some might argue in that sense, but Mapo, Disco Elysium, and Pentiment also have set playable characters. And it is true, except for the fact that with Disco Elysium, you create your character's mental state. You create your character's personality. You are role-playing as a certain character who has his name and identity, but you choose who he is and how he is. In Pentiment, you are the same in that it's very dialogue heavy. You are choosing what type of person this character is. Those are the clear differentiations for me. In Sekiro, you are playing as the lone wolf. You are playing as that shinobi character, and there's not a lot of choice there for you. As much as the game is incredible, it falls out of being nominated in the RPG category for me. So Demon's Souls slots in there instead, because Demon's Souls and Elden Ring, you take sort of like an absolute unknown, and you throw yourself into the story, and you make your own story from sort of like a role-playing definition, you can role-play as whatever the hell you want with just an exceptional amount of freedom there, you know? And there will be people that will cherish the story and narrative elements or the dialogue of an RPG over sort of the gameplay role-playing aspect. There's a whole bunch of different ways that RPGs get sort of handled by the gaming community. But those are my 5 nominees, with the winner being Elden Ring. Elden Ring wins Best Role-Playing Game because just the sheer amount of systems that are available to you to engage with, you have so many tools at your disposal, and you can choose to be just whatever you want. And I love the openness of an approach to Elden Ring where you can go anywhere, do anything sort of thing. And I really liked that about Elden Ring, that I didn't feel constrained in that way to go on a particular path. I'm like, I can just go anywhere, to the point that there was stuff that I missed in the very early parts of the game because I just picked a direction and ran with it. And it was great because it allows for everyone to have so much more of a unique experience going into that. And you create the story of your character, you know, essentially you create the legend of your tarnished character. And that is why that one wins for me. Alas, the runner-up is Disco Elysium, because Disco Elysium is just such a game. Disco Elysium is such a game, you know, it really is. The way that you can be just such a, either the most like stoic, brawny type character to the most like nimble and intelligent like detective. Like there are so many ways that dialogue influences the flow of that game that just really always surprised me. And I loved the elements of dialogue in that game and how your choices played out within the greater narrative. And that goes to my second spot, is Disco Elysium. And then the other game that takes the third spot is Knights of the Old Republic 2. Specifically Knights of the Old Republic 2, because while this game has its reputation for being a little bit rushed and a little bit unfinished in ways, the ambition and sort of like the intention that they were going for with character interactions and their sort of alignment, the way that you can make yourself popular with other characters and not popular with others, and how they would choose to interact with you based on your choices, felt very complex and deep for me for a game from 2004. It just had some really incredible role-playing gameplay, you know, to be given to you. Create your own character in there, and there is obviously that set narrative that you go along. But the way that you can choose to make friends or enemies of your party, and the way that they all come into your life in that game, felt very, very interesting. It was like the weirdest ragtag Star Wars group ever of how they all came together, because they were not really friends, and there's a lot of people that come together out of like necessity for a common goal, or like maybe it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend for now. And it felt very, very interesting to have the characters interact in that way, especially with how things end up playing out towards the end, and just how differently it can go from a light side to a dark side playthrough as well. So we have a Elden Ring winner, we've got Disco Elysium as a runner-up, and Knights of the Old Republic in the third spot as well for RPG. So that was probably the hardest category out of the genre ones for me to nail down. And then we move into Best Shooter. Now, I had to get a little loose with my definition here, because there are some games that are definitely shooters, and other games, like maybe like two of them, where there's, or like one of them, where there's shooting in it, and it is like a shooter, but it's a little bit of a different type of shooter experience. And again, it's another opportunity for me to put a spotlight on a particular game that I enjoyed very much. Even if it doesn't win, get to put a spotlight on it. So the best shooters, the 5 nominees for this category are Dead Space 3, as because I played Dead Space 3 this year. and I didn't play the other ones. So that's why Dead Space 3 is in there. Modern Warfare 2. I did play that this year as well. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Dino Crisis 2. You do shoot guns in it, so I've classified it as a shooter. Metro Last Light and Half-Life 2. Because that is also a shooter. You do be shooting a lot. And this game, this genre is an interesting one, because it's like I've played a lot of shooters and it's like, what is the criteria? Like, why do I love this shooter more than this other one? Why did it feel better to shoot this gun than it did with this gun in this game? And ultimately, at the end of the day, it does come down to how it felt to play it, how engaging it was, how rewarding it was, just like the way that like things work in that game. It's not necessarily the most. I'm not going for this one was the most realistic way to shoot a gun. You know, it's like, was it fun? Was it immersive? Was it engaging? You know, in putting a gun in your hands and shooting it. And the winner for Best Shooter, we have a game that is winning another award. Metro Last Light wins Best Shooter, because again, like I said, just the way that I felt immersed and the way that it felt to play with that one was exceptional. I liked the feel of all of the weapons and shooting them all, and how responsive they were to certain enemies, how impactful like bullets felt to certain characters and enemies as well, and creatures. It was just really, really, really great. So from a best overall shooter experience, Last Light takes the top spot, with Half-Life 2 taking the second spot. And then we also have Modern Warfare 2 taking the third spot, because Modern Warfare 2 does feel really good. Like that game, and even Modern Warfare 2019 when I played it, and this game as well, just feel really great to play around with those guns and shoot them. It's just satisfying in that sense, and that's why that gets the third spot. So Metro Last Light, Half-Life 2, and Modern Warfare 2. A lot of sequels in there, except for Dead Space 3 being a threequel, the third game in the series. And then we move into the third and final genre category, which was Best Horror. So Best Horror for this year. It was an interesting year for horror on the channel. We've played an interesting collection of games, and an interesting collection of games. And I've played more than 5 horror games, but only almost. I've almost played 5 or less. So because I went through some really good horror games in the past couple of years, and there's definitely a lot that are on my list to still get to. But we played an interesting collection of horror games this year, and a different variety of them as well, with different gameplay experiences. And the 5 nominations for Best Horror Game goes to Resident Evil 3 Remake, Little Nightmares 2, Dead Space 3, Until Dawn, and Condemned: Criminal Origins. Now, I also played a couple of Silent Hill games this year. They did not make the cut. Shattered Memories and Homecoming we played. They did not make the cut because, as much as I enjoyed Shattered Memories, for example, that's a 6th nomination, and I limited myself to 5. So Silent Hill is sitting this one out. But horror. How do we define horror? What's the criteria for that? Is it how genuinely scary it was? Is it based on jump scares? Is it based on sort of how unsettling it felt? What element of horror appeals to me the most in order to rank these games? You know, because everyone's going to get scared by different things. Some people value the jump scares. Some people value just feeling completely fucking uncomfortable. Like it's going to be an experience like that. That is it sort of how horrific the game is built from an environmental setting? Is it horrific to look at? All that kind of stuff. And the winner for me for best horror, which will be the best way for me to explain it, is Condemned Criminal Origins. That game made me feel uncomfortable. I felt on the edge of my seat and very tense playing through that game a lot. There are elements of that game that just get into your senses, and I found that to be really great. I liked how the game played as well. It had a really interesting and unique approach to combat and scavenging equipment that you need from weapons like guns to melee weapons, and how that's all utilized, and actually like kicking enemies and blocking, and how every encounter with just any enemy in that game felt stressful because anyone could take you out. That was how well presented that was. There's a particular level in that game where the whole time I was just like, I feel so uncomfortable, like just on edge the whole time. And there are ways that they use like audio cues and sound design, as well as the overall presentation, to make that a really good horror experience, and one that I highly recommend because it's one of the first games that came out on the Xbox 360 back in 2005. So it's quite an old game at this point, and it might look it, but I don't think it's aged poorly at all. And I think that is mostly just due to the fact that it's a very unique game to play, and a very effective one at that. And I liked the story of it as well, and how the character was involved in that. There was a lot of twists and turns that I didn't expect, and that's also another good thing about horror, is you don't want to be able to predict the whole thing, and horror tends to be one of the most easily predictable genres. That is the winner, and my runner-up winner for best horror does go to Until Dawn. It goes to Until Dawn, and it was a game that initially I wasn't sure on when I first started playing it. The first couple of episodes going through it, I was like, I'm not sure how I'm feeling about it yet. It hadn't really grabbed me, and I was kind of like, oh, it's cheesy, but it was in a way that it was obviously all intentional, and it was initially off-putting, but I fell into it a little bit more, and I allowed myself to go on that ride. And then I started getting more and more interested in the story developments and the characters, and while trying to guess things and sort of suss out the predictable nature of some of it, there was a lot of things that took me by surprise in that game, and there's a lot of things that didn't play out how I thought, and a lot of things that did play out how I thought, but it was intentional because it was that sort of like that particular horror genre of like, campy group of teenagers in the woods type of horror experience, and I really appreciated it by the end. And I liked that it's a choose your own adventure type horror. I think that's the big appeal for me, is I love the choose your own adventure aspect of it, that makes replayability exciting. It's obviously one of those games that from core story elements, you can only play it through that first time to get that story surprise, but then the other ones, it starts becoming more of a, how can you see how differently things can go, just making an absolute mess of it from the beginning, or like carefully sort of constructing it to try and get everyone out alive or no one out alive, and all of that kind of stuff. And Until Dawn takes the second spot, with my third place going to Resident Evil 3 Remake. And Resident Evil 3 Remake is a controversial game. It's a controversial game in the remake series. A lot of people have a lot of opinions on it, and some people were very disappointed with Remake for its length and things that were cut from the original, and I do agree. I do definitely agree. However, it still gets into my third spot because it just felt amazing, and it felt great to run through Raccoon City in that graphical fidelity. Game looks great, and it was awesome the way that the characters would interact. So much fun, because it's obviously just building on what was established with Resident Evil 2 Remake in terms of its visual presentation. And yeah, Resident Evil 3 Remake was so much fun to go through, even though it was a little bit shorter, and Nemesis was terrifying, and I loved his design, so that was a lot of fun. Obviously, I wish that game might have gotten a little more time in the oven and was longer, but it does go into my third spot, because I did ultimately really enjoy Resident Evil 3 Remake. And that brings our genre awards to a close. The genre awards have now closed. Thank you so much for being there. And we are now going to move into some final categories now. We're getting into some final categories. We're going to do the category that I did not announce, surprise category. Best cat game of 2022. The best game where you play as a cat goes to Stray. Stray sweep. Stray won, everybody. There you go. Everybody give a round of applause for Stray for winning best cat game, best indie game, best debut indie game. Stray wins. Okay. Get that out of here. Get that off stage. Let's go for this category, which I think is really nice, which is called the Hidden Gem. This category is called the Hidden Gem. So there are 5 games I played on the channel that are games that do not get much mainstream attention. They might be games that you love. They might be games that quite a substantial portion of people love, but in the mainstream, in the grand scheme of things, in what people think with video games, these games might not get thought about much, and they might not get much sort of appeal. They might have not sold well. They might just be very obscure. And I played 5 of them this year, and they're kind of like hidden gems to me. They might not be a hidden gem to you. And there's one game in here that is a recent release, but I still think it's a hidden gem because a lot of people are going to sleep on this game because of what type of game that it is, and a lot of people might struggle to get into it. So it is still it's the hidden gem of 2022. That's one of the games for me. So the 5 nominees for the Hidden Gem Award goes to, or the nominees are, doesn't go to, don't get ahead of yourselves. The nominations are Policenauts, Ico, Condemned Criminal Origins, Dino Crisis 2, and Pentiment. So Pentiment is my 2022 diamond in the rough. That's a hidden gem that I think a lot of people are gonna sleep on. Now, Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, The Last Guardian, right? So like, Shadow of the Colossus, I wouldn't think is a hidden gem, and The Last Guardian, I haven't played it yet, but I also don't think that one's a hidden gem because of just sort of like the reputation and the legacy that Fumito Ueda has, right? He seems to have a massive legacy to him, and people are like, this guy is amazing. And Ico is like the game that inspired Miyazaki to do Dark Souls, to do that kind of stuff. That's a very important game, but Ico didn't sell very well, apparently, and it's also seemingly kind of not mentioned a lot in that sort of category of games. They talk about sort of Shadow of the Colossus more. Shadow of the Colossus got a PS4 remake, for example, and Ico and Shadow of the Colossus did get the PS3 remasters as well, but that was more of like a collection, which they were doing at the time for a lot of games on the PS3. But there are games like Policenauts, which has never been officially translated and released in English. The only way to play that in English is with fan-patched versions. They've done fan translations, so it's very much a hidden gem just due to the lack of exposure, stuff like that. My winner of the hidden gem out of these 5, just ones that just really kind of, took me by surprise with what type of game that they were, because I had no expectations or no idea of what these games were going to be. Is Policenauts is my winner of the hidden gem. It's more of a visual novel adventure, and it does have a slight shooter gameplay element to it at some points, but it is very much sort of a a visual novel type adventure, but it's got that Kojima flair to it. It has his personality all over it. I think the characters are really well done. The story was very enticing. I loved going through it because it's a mystery. It's a detective story in a cyberpunk setting, and it's great. That game would look insanely gorgeous with a remaster and an official translation, because obviously I played it with like pixelated anime graphics, but if it like was sharp and in HD, that would be just amazing. Policenauts, definitely the hidden gem of my channel for 2022, with Pentiment being in second place, because people are going to sleep on that game, and people should not sleep on it. They should open their minds to a different type of experience and allow themselves to learn some cool art history and get into the shoes of the main character and really just go along for that ride. Pentiment is absolutely going to be a hidden gem for a long time to come, but people should and most definitely could play it. It's free on Game Pass. Just get it, check it out, because it's worth it. Or just watch my playthrough of it, because I fully voice acted it for you instead. And then my third place goes to Ico. I think Ico was just magical. It was a short game, but it was magical, and it had a little bit of that jank to it, but it was charming, and I really liked it. I liked Ico. That's my third hidden gem, but I think that was a pretty good category of like 5 games that I think are like sort of hidden gems in the gaming space. And that brings sort of like the last of those categories to a close, because we're going to be moving into, I think we've got 4 more categories left. And these are like 2 main ones where we're going to move into the game of the year this year and my overall favorite game on the channel this year. And then we've also got the fan favorite and the most anticipated for 2023. So we're going to do the fan favorite category now. So the fan favorite category is the most viewed series on the channel this year, for games that came out this year on the channel. And because different games have different lengths, it's unfair to put a game that's had like 20, 30 plus episodes compared to a game that might have had like 9 or 12 episodes and be like, well, this one had more views overall, so it wins this one. But so what I've kind of gone for there is it really is the first episode of a Let's Play has determined the fan favorites, because the first episode and the last episode will always get the most views in a playthrough. That's just kind of how things have always been till the end of time, and you will have people that just want to check out the start, people who want to see how you reacted to the end, and they'll miss all of the context of the rest of it, and that's fine. That is unfortunately just how things go. But there is a lot of games in this fan favorite category because there was a lot of big games played on the channel this year. It was a big game year, big year for games. So there's more than 5 in this category, and the fan favorites list is as follows. The nominees, it's not really a nominees, it's more of a ranking at this point. So we've got Elden Ring, we've got Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, we've got Portal, we've got Disco Elysium, we've got Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, we've got Half-Life 2, we've got Demon's Souls, we've got Outer Wilds, and we've got one more that does break its chains. How I said that this game was excluded from the Game Awards this year, but it fits in the fan favorite category for its opening episode. So it gets to make an appearance at the Game Awards after all, which is Dragon Age Origins for its opening episode. So those are the fan favorites of my channel in 2022. And the winner, the most viewed, the fan favorite game on my channel this year was Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2 with 112,000 views on that first episode, which was amazing and ultimately very, very unexpected. A lot of people tuned in for Half-Life 1, but Half-Life 2 skyrocketed in a way that I couldn't have expected. And that was nice because my playthroughs on the channel will either kind of fly under the radar or for some reason they'll get launched into orbit and broadcasted to everyone apparently, which is really, really nice because it helps me tremendously. And having Half-Life 2 blow up in the way that it did was wild. I really summoned the Valve fan base to my channel. I put out the beacon and everyone showed up for Half-Life 2, which was really, really nice. Which was really, really nice to have that viewership. So Half-Life 2 was the most viewed and the fan favorite of 2022. Portal was the next one. Portal had 109,000 views on that first Portal episode. Portal 2 obviously will get a mention. It has to get an honorable mention as its Portal was much shorter, and then Portal 2 had a few more episodes, but yeah, Portal 1 and 2 kind of get lumped in together there as being massive. So Valve fans really showed up to be the crowning fan favorites of 2022. And in third place sits Elden Ring. So Elden Ring sits there at a comfortable 91,000 views on that first episode, which is amazing. Genuinely amazing. A lot of people tuned in to Elden Ring, and I think what's really good about that one is Elden Ring was a game that I played as it came out. So for a game to be played as a new release that a lot of people also want to play for themselves, but also showing up and watching the playthrough was very lovely and very appreciated. That people obviously came back to it a little bit later, but people were obviously very happy to come and watch my journey through it as well, which was really, really nice. So that's like the top three. Once we get past those three, viewership does drop on some things to more, I guess, reasonable levels, because there are, I sort of will those are sort of exceptions to my playthroughs. They're like the big ones. They're like the big ones that just get a lot of views. But then sort of my other bigger playthroughs will sort of vary between like anywhere like maybe 15k views on the first episode to maybe like 30 or 40 if it's like really, really hitting like a particular part of the algorithm, which is nice. So Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is in fourth place with 57,000 views on the first episode, which was nice. Disco Elysium with 37,000 on the first episode. And then from here it does start dropping down into Dragon Age Origins. So we got Dragon Age Origins with 34,000, which is very, very nice. BioWare fans do like to show up, which is great. They did it for Mass Effect. They've done it for Knights of the Old Republic. Now they're doing it for Dragon Age. And speaking of Knights of the Old Republic, that one also got a lot of attention, which was nice. The first game, specifically, with 30,000 views. And then we have Demon's Souls, which has a 23,000 viewership on the first episode. And then sitting in last place, but deservedly needs this mention, is Outer Wilds at 17,000, because Outer Wilds is probably one of, if not the most recommended game for me to play on my channel. So it was definitely a fan favorite in the way that it has the most sort of passionate fan base for wanting to introduce you to the game. They're like, please play it. Outer Wilds was definitely my most recommended game. And I feel like the reason why I can say that over games like the From Software games and stuff like that and Valve is because they're not really recommending you to play future FromSoft games because they know that you're going to, and Valve fans mostly recommended me playing all of the mods instead. But Outer Wilds fans just be showing up being like, hey, you would like this game. I didn't even need to summon them with like a game in the same series because it's a standalone game. They're just like, you play Outer Wilds, please. So it gets a big honorable mention from, while not being the most viewed, definitely the most recommended. So that was a nice little thing to look at, the fan favorites for the year, the fan favorite playthroughs, and then thinking about what will be the fan favorites for next year. You know, hopefully we can go big next year too. I would really love that. Otherwise, I fall into obscurity and die. We don't want that. We don't want that. So we'll see how next year goes. Which is, you know, it's an exciting thing to think about, because next year's going to have some really, really amazing experiences, both old and new. I can tell you that much. We have 3 more categories left, and we're going to go in order of my overall favorite game on the channel for this year, my game of the year for 2022, and then my most anticipated games for 2023. So let's run it. Let's run this shit now with my overall favorite game of the channel for this year. So this will be an interesting one for people, because you might look at this and go, oh, well, this is just going to be your game of the year 2022, isn't it? No, wrong. Because these are games that I have played this year that are games that I consider to be the games of the year for the years that they came out in. You know, this is like a game of the year fight. There are some that are not my, you know, games of the year for that year, because there's games in here that came out in the same year. And that is a battle in itself. But there are 5 nominees here, which is probably the hardest 5 to choose, because the games that I played this year, just really, really good games. And limiting it to 5 was interesting to see the games that were not included. I was more interested to see what games don't make the top 5. And it's not that, and it's really hard in that you want to look at it and go, is it because I liked this game more than that one? It's like, I don't know. It's sometimes it's hard to rank things in that sense. And I really just have to look at it as like, how did that game make me feel overall? And also not wanting to allow myself to be blinded by like sort of like a recent release bias or anything like that, just because it's been sat with me and it's fresh. You want to see how things have kind of sat with you and developed over time as well, you know? So with that in mind, my overall favorite games on the channel, limited to five games, are as follows, right? Metro 2033, Outer Wilds, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, Disco Elysium, and Half-Life Alyx. Those are my 5. My overall favorite game on the channel for 2022. I pick Metro 2033 over Last Light as an example, just to say, because while I think Last Light is like the better game overall that really sort of expanded upon things in a beautiful way, and I love Last Light, 2033 was my introduction to the world. And there ain't nothing quite like that first experience to a new world, you know, that just really hits with you and resonates with you. So Metro 2033 sits in there over Last Light for that reason. But the winner of my overall favorite game for 2022 is Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium might largely just be my favorite, really close to being one of my favorite games of all time. There is just so much to love, so much to appreciate about Disco Elysium. It is amazing, and if you haven't played it, please play it. Just dive in, because it's so much fun, and the characters are great, the music is exceptional, the way that the game is presented to you is incredible. You're reading the most interactive novel of your life. You do a lot of reading, there's a lot of dialogue, but it's good, it's very well written, it's all fully voice acted, and the game made me laugh so much, you know. I'm laughing from dialogue, just written words on a screen. It's really, really well done. Disco Elysium is my favorite game on the channel for 2022. My second place, my runner-up for my overall favorite game is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. because that game is my favorite FromSoft game. That is my favorite out of all of them. Sekiro sits very comfy at the top of the list. Shadows Die Twice is just the game. It feels good when the game clicks for you in the combat and how it's supposed to go. It just flows like masterfully. The way that it just feels to be in combat, the way that the music's pounding in your ears, the tension of those fights against just standard enemies and boss fights, all of it, the presentation of it, the lore, just like the mythology of the world. Sekiro is a beautiful game. Beautiful, beautiful game, and I would love to see that get a sequel or continuation or something in that same setting, because it's definitely my favorite of the FromSoft games. So it takes my second spot as overall favorite game on the channel. And then we're going to give a third spot to Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds sits very comfortably as well in the third spot. It's an absolute delight. And if you haven't played it, if you haven't watched the playthrough, I don't want to talk too much on it, because it is a game that you can only experience it once, and you will never be able to experience it again in that way. You can play it again for fun, and you can try and do things in the game differently, and you can still find comfort in that game, but Outer Wilds is a one and done in a very particular way. Is like, you need to know nothing about it, and you need to just see if it grabs you, and hopefully it does, and you go along for that ride, and it's beautiful. Play Outer Wilds if you haven't played Outer Wilds before, and just know that while it's number 3 in my overall favorite game on the channel 2022, that's a big thing, because 5 games out of the many games that we've played on the channel, like many games I played on the channel, it's hard to limit it to just like 5 sometimes. Like, I think when I counted the games that I played last year in 2021, I think I played like 50 games on the channel. Like, I'm playing a lot of video games, guys. So, you know, to pick 5 is hard. And for a game to sit at, you know, the third spot, I think says a lot. So, Disco Elysium, number 1. Sekiro at number 2. Outer Wilds at number 3. But that is obviously my top 5 for 2022, which I think is pretty damn exceptional. So those are definitely games that I would recommend that you play if you haven't played already, and very different experiences, all of them as well. They're not just all similar experiences. And now to the final category of an award, to the final award category, second to last of this video, is we are going to talk about my game of the year for 2022. Now, this is an interesting list because I'm pretty sure that my 5 nominees are the only 5 games that I've played on the channel that released this year. So it's a funny list. And I feel like people know what the answer is. I feel like people already know what's going on here in terms of a ranking, and that is probably a good thing, because it means you know and understand what I resonate with the most. You know how immersive I like to get in my games. You know how much I care about characters. You know how much I care about story. You know how much I care about like the emotional stakes, my investment in the narrative, in the experience, just how a game takes you by the hand and says, come with me, you're gonna have a fucking time. You're gonna have the time of your life. My nominees for Game of the Year 2022 are Scorn, Game of the Year, Scorn, Modern Warfare 2, Pentiment, God of War Ragnarok, and Elden Ring. Those are the 5 games of 2022 that I've played on the channel. And it's funny because I almost put Scorn in Best Art Direction, but I only put it in there for it to just not even get the award, because it would get cancelled because its art direction relies on famous artists' work and not unique to its own experience. But it does have a good art direction for what it's inspired by, at the very least. But yeah, I played Modern Warfare 2 and Scorn around the same time because they came out in October, and then Pentiment and God of War Ragnarok came out recently, and Elden Ring was at the beginning of the year. I have not played the other major releases of 2022 as of yet. They are on the to-do list. Lo and behold, the winner of Game of the Year 2022 is God of War Ragnarok. And if you watch my ending episode of God of War Ragnarok, you will know why. You will absolutely know why, because I have such an investment in the series and in the characters, and it's genuinely one of my favorite experiences of my entire existence. God of War 2018 was my personal game of the year for that game as well. Sorry, for that year as well. Going up against even stuff like Red Dead 2 and stuff like that. But God of War Ragnarok also takes Game of the Year for this year. And it's not an easy pick between Ragnarok and Elden Ring for the most part. There are things about both of those games that are just amazing. Like Elden Ring's won some awards in this show tonight, you know? And so is Ragnarok. But there are just, it's an overall feeling of like what grabbed me the most. And I think the core component of this Game of the Year victory is the storyline. It's the story, it's the characters, and it's the way that it is told. It's the way that story is told to you. And it absolutely takes the top spot, especially after the finale episode. It was because of that finale episode that allowed me to make my choice. Going through that whole game, for both games, I'm like, both of these games are just amazing. They're so good. And, you know, I wasn't making my final decision on Game of the Year until I'd finished the story of Ragnarok to really be like, all right, how do I feel at the end? Because it could have fallen apart at the end. It could have totally not been what I wanted. And it could have been like, it could have not stuck that landing. And I had no idea during the time of the Game Awards if that was going to be the case. So it was very, very heartwarming to get to the end of God of War Ragnarok, see the credits roll, and see the credits roll again, and go, absolutely Game of the Year 2022. So God of War Ragnarok wins, and I'm so happy that it did. I'm so happy that the game was good, and I'm happy that I enjoyed it, because I think there's nothing worse than a game that you are so very excited for not sticking the landing for you, or not living up to your expectations, you know? So having high expectations and having them be exceeded, and you know, it landing for me was very, very good. Elden Ring obviously gets number 2. It gets runner-up number 2, and Pentiment is game number 3. That sits at number 3. So God of War Ragnarok, Elden Ring, and Pentiment are my top 3 games of 2022, and I think that's a pretty damn good thing. I realize that I now sitting here that I did also play Stray. But Stray also got the award for Best Cat Game. So just think of Best Cat Game as a supplementary category of Game of the Year 2022. It was the Cat Game of the Year 2022. There you go. Stray as the other game. And now we're going to close out the Mapocolops Game Awards. I've sat in front of you for an hour and 20 minutes straight, which is nice. No breaks. I've just run through this list of all my Game Awards. You've been an exceptionally respectable and quiet audience. You've been, every time I've spoken, you've just been not making a mess, which is great. You've been such a great audience for me today. I've got no mysterious characters sneaking up on stage to dedicate awards to any particular presidential figures, which is great. Security's been tight. We've absolutely nailed it today, and I get to close out the awards ceremony with my most anticipated games for 2023. 5 of them again. 5 nominations. It's been limited to 5. There are 5 games here in particular that I'm very excited to play and share with you on the channel when they drop. And I'm just going to run through this, not in a nomination sense, but I'm just going to run through it in my order of 1 to 5, okay? My most anticipated games for 2023 are Final Fantasy 16. Are you surprised? You shouldn't be. Final Fantasy 16 is going to absolutely amaze me. It's going to amaze everyone, and it looks beautiful. And Yoshi P just knows how to put a game together. He's been able to announce this game and just deliver in exceptional time. And Final Fantasy 16 is just going to be, it's going to be a ride. It's going to be a ride. It looks fun. The story looks exciting. I love the focus on dealing with sort of like the summons in that game and how they're going to play into the larger story. It looks so good. Definitely anticipated. My second game that I anticipate for next year is Star Wars Jedi Survivor 2. I am a lifelong massive Star Wars fan, along, with being a massive lifelong Final Fantasy fan. Star Wars is also something that I'm just so into, and the Fallen Order was just amazing. I need to do a replay of that game before Survivor comes out for sure, because I played it when it first came out and haven't touched it since. So it'd be nice to get back into that one, because Jedi Survivor just looks really, really nice. And I can't wait to see how that story's gonna play out years later as well. So that's definitely in my second spot. My third most anticipated title is Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. My only Legend of Zelda game that I have played was Breath of the Wild, because I bought a Nintendo Switch in 2018 when I was feeling mighty sad about life at the time, and it was there for me. I played, Breath of the Wild in 2018, and it just surprised me in ways that I never expected a game could. There was always just this thing with Breath of the Wild that I was like, I would ask myself the question, oh, can I do this? Probably not, like it's a video game. And then I'd be like, oh, I can do that. And it was just always a nice, pleasant surprise. It just made me very happy. Breath of the Wild was so much fun to play, and while it may be my only sort of foray into the Legend of Zelda series right now, I fully intend to play the other games in the series, but I am highly anticipating the Breath of the Wild sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, and I hope that it lives up to that hype and excitement, because it's definitely one that a lot of us are all anticipating. So I will be very excited to share Tears of the Kingdom with you when it drops as well. My fourth and most anticipated game for next year is Resident Evil 4 Remake, because Resident Evil 4 was so much fun to play on the channel when I played it for the first time, and the remake just looks exceptional. What have I got to say? I'm really, really enjoying the Resident Evil remakes, because I've been playing the originals, and it looks like it's going to be amazing. I can't wait to see more of the game. I might hold off more trailers at this point and just let myself go into all of the new stuff in the later parts of the game, but I'm very excited to see it, because Resident Evil 4 is a big game too. A lot of stuff in there. So they've learned their lessons from Resident Evil 3 remake, I think, is at least what they've said, and they are very much excited to share Resident Evil 4 remake with us. And then hopefully we're one step closer to a Code Veronica remake. Am I right? Code Veronica remake, please? I'm down for it. I think it deserves it. It's the last of the fixed camera perspective games, and it's a good one. I liked Code Veronica. I would love a remake for it. And then my fifth most anticipated title for 2023 is Starfield. It's Bethesda's Starfield. Their first original game experience in 5,000 million years. They are doing a unique new IP, and I'm really excited, cautiously optimistic. I think we've got some classic Todd Howard, it just works, 1,000 planets marketing speech stuff to worry about, but I really hope that it is good, because it needs to be. It needs to be. They can't fumble it, so hopefully they don't. But it is an anticipated title for me nonetheless. I'm very excited. Love my sci-fi. So it'll be something to experience regardless. And those are my 5 most anticipated games for 2023, because those are the only games that have genuine 2023 release windows. I would love to put Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on here, part 2 of the remake, but we don't know at the moment if it's actually going to hit the end of 2023. It could still have room to be delayed. We don't know. So those are my confirmed releases for 2023 that are most anticipated. And that was my Mapocolops Game Awards. I hope you enjoyed my categories and my explanations on things and why I view games in a particular way, because video games are very special to me. They've always been there for me in the tough times and the good times, and they've always been a nice little escape when things might not be so great. But it's also just always a thing to appreciate as an art form, as a video game. Like I love playing games. I love getting involved in the story. I love getting immersed as much as possible, and something I love more than anything, and I've come to really love and appreciate in the past couple of years, is that I get to share it with all of you, and that is a genuine blessing and something I am forever grateful for every single day. It is nice that when I am putting together content for the channel, I'm doing it for you because I love doing it, and I just hope that you will continue to enjoy watching it and going through it with me, So thank you so much for being here and supporting my channel and watching these playthroughs. If there are any games in here that I've mentioned that have gotten your interest now that I've brought some attention to them, they have my genuine recommendations. There's so much fun, and I love so many different types of video games. I've got so many games to look forward to next year that are, not new releases, games that are on my to-do list as well. So do not stress. Next year will be busy, as always, because it will be new games and old games and recommended games and everything. Right now we're going through a couple of games, and I'm also sort of trying to slow down like a little bit because I've been like in sort of like holiday season overdrive, and just been having a lot of like big life things happening at the moment. So I appreciate patience in slowing down just a slight bit for now, but as always, I will get that motivation back, and I will want to obviously play many games and share them with you next year. So thank you so much for watching the Mapocolops Game Awards. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. So happy and grateful to have you here. Hope you've had a good holiday season, and I hope you bring in the new year with a lot of positive energy. And whatever you're doing, whoever you're spending it with, even if you are spending it on your own, just know that you're not alone, because there are many of us that might be kicking it alone and just chilling out this New Year's and just trying to be good to ourselves and just do the best that we possibly can. So just always be your best self, okay? And be good to yourselves, and have a good new year, because just remember that you are the masters of your own reality. You create your own reality. So don't wallow in sadness if you're feeling it. Conquer that, rise above it, because that is what we're all just trying to do. We're all just trying to get through in some pretty tough times, and I believe in you, and I believe in all of us. So thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed this silly little Game Awards show, me talking about video games, and I hope you're excited for what's to come next year. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.